The door opened, and a girl, a teenager really, maybe 16, walked into William's books. November wind, sharp and unforgiving, clawed at the edges of the old glass, trying to follow her in. It smelled of wet wool and the bitter cold, an intruder in the warm, layered scent of old paper and dust motes dancing in the weak overhead lights. She was thin, her clothes a collection of mismatched, too big pieces. A faded denim jacket, jeans worn smooth at the knees and frayed at the cuffs, a backpack that looked like it had seen more miles than any 16-year-old should. I was behind the counter, hunched over the accounts, the numbers a familiar liturgy of slow decline. Paul had always handled the ledgers, his pen scratching a rhythmic counterpoint to the rustle of pages. Now it was just me, Linda Williams, 72 years old and feeling every single one of them. The silence in the store, once a comfortable companion when Paul was alive, now felt vast and empty, a constant echo of his absence. 2 years gone, and the grief still clung to me like the winter chill seeping into my bones. My son, Chris, had been gone even longer, in his own way. He'd left with a bitter taste in his mouth, taking the last shred of my hope for a normal family with him. The girl stood just inside the door, hesitant, her eyes scanning the shelves. She wasn't browsing, not truly. She was evaluating, assessing, looking for a place to simply be. Her gaze drifted over the worn spines, a curious light in her pale eyes, before settling on me. "Excuse me," she said, her voice a reedy whisper, barely audible above the hum of the old fluorescent lights. I looked up, pushing my reading glasses higher on my nose. "Yes? Are you hiring?" She shifted her weight, one shoulder strap of her backpack digging into her thin frame. "I need work. I'm good with books." I set down my pen, a cheap ballpoint that left smudges on the crisp white paper. "How old are you?" 16. The answer came too quickly, too practiced. "I know I'm young, but I work hard. I can prove it." My gaze sharpened, fixing on her face. And that's when it happened. A jolt, sharp and sudden, like static electricity in the dry air, her jawline, the subtle curve of her brow, the deep-set eyes, even the way she held her chin. It was a ghost, a memory. Amanda. Amanda. Chris's girlfriend from 17 years ago. She used to come into the store, a shy, quiet girl with dark hair and a tendency to blush. She'd sit on the floor in the poetry section, reading aloud to Chris, who'd pretend to listen while doodling in a notebook. They were sweet in a fleeting, youthful way. Then, one day, she was just gone. Chris had shrugged when I asked, said she went back home, they'd broken up. He hadn't seemed to care, had moved on with the effortless ease of a 20-year-old. I never saw Amanda again, until now. This girl, standing before me, a stranger, yet her features echoed Amanda's with an unnerving precision. My heart began to thrum a nervous rhythm against my ribs. Coincidence? Or something else entirely? "What's your name, dear?" I asked, my voice a little steadier than I felt. "Jennifer," she replied, then added, after a slight hesitation, "Carter, Jennifer Carter." The name settled in the quiet air of the bookstore, heavy with unspoken possibilities. 16 years old, Amanda. The timeline, the name, the face. It was too much to be a random chance. My gut, that old, reliable internal compass Paul had always trusted, screamed at me. "Where do you live, Jennifer?" She looked down at her worn sneakers. "There's a shelter a couple blocks over. I've been staying there." A shelter. Homeless. "You're not from around here?" "No. Upstate. I ran away from an orphanage about a year ago." An orphanage. The words were a lead weight in my stomach. 16 and already carrying a lifetime of burdens. "Your parents?" Her shoulders hitched almost imperceptibly. "My mom died when I was 12. Her voice thinned, became almost insubstantial. "My dad died before I was born. That's what my mom told me." The rote delivery of the explanation, a phrase rehearsed countless times, drained the pain from the words, leaving only a hollow echo. "I'm sorry," I said, and I truly was. For her, for Amanda, for the unanswered questions that now bloomed in my mind like bitter weeds. Thank you, she nodded, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement. What was your mother's name? Amanda. She looked up, her eyes wide, searching mine. Amanda Carter? The air in the store thickened, suddenly too heavy to breathe. Amanda Carter. My breath hitched. This wasn't coincidence. This was fate. A cruel twist of time bringing the past into my present. My son, Chris, he would be her father. The thought slammed into me with the force of a physical blow. I stared at Jennifer, really seeing her now, the ghost of Chris in the curve of her smile, the way she held her shoulders. It was all there, undeniable. I had to know for sure, but I couldn't tell her, not yet, not until I understood. Can I ask you something? Jennifer's voice was hesitant, pulling me back from the whirlwind of my thoughts. Do you really have a job, or were you just being nice? The raw hope in her eyes, warring with a deep-seated fear of rejection. My decision was made in that instant, a swift, fierce conviction that cut through the fog of grief and loneliness. I have a job, I said, my voice firm. Sure, you're hired if you want it. Her eyes widened, a flicker of pure astonishment. Really? Can you start tomorrow at 9? She looked around the empty store, then back at me, disbelief etched on her face. You don't know anything about me. I know you love books. That's enough for now. She started to tremble just a little. I don't have references or anything. That's fine. We'll figure it out. I came around the counter, the old floorboards groaning under my weight. There's a couch in the back office. It's not much, but it's warmer than a shelter. You can use it until you find something better. She stood rooted, trying to process this unexpected offer. Her eyes welled up, but she blinked rapidly, fiercely, trying to hide the tears. Thank you, she whispered, her voice raw with emotion. I won't let you down, I promise. I believe you, she nodded, swiping a hand across her wet cheeks. 9 o'clock tomorrow. 9 o'clock. She turned, walked slowly toward the door, her movements still hesitant. She reached the threshold, her hand on the cold brass handle, then stopped, turning back to me. Why are you doing this? I looked at her, this stranger who was, or soon would be, family. Because you asked, I said, a small, genuine smile touching my lips. And I have a job that needs doing. She nodded, a faint light in her eyes, then stepped out into the freezing November night. I stood there alone, the account still spread on the counter, the silence pressing in, now charged with a new, potent energy. Amanda Carter had a daughter, and that daughter had just walked into my bookstore, my son's daughter. I sank back into the creaky chair behind the counter, pressing my palms flat against the cold ledger. The math was stark, unforgiving. Chris and Amanda, 17 years ago. Jennifer, 16 now. It wasn't coincidence. It was a truth I had to uncover, but carefully, so carefully. Tonight, I just sat there in the bookstore that had been Paul's and mine for 40 years, the bookstore that was only mine now, and I wondered if maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as alone as I thought. She showed up at 8:45 the next morning, a faint mist of her breath ghosting in the crisp air. I was just unlocking the heavy wooden door, the cold metal biting at my gloved fingers, when I saw her coming down the sidewalk. Same worn backpack, a different jacket, just as oversized. Her dark hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail, and she walked with a purposeful stride, as if afraid I might change my mind if she lingered. Good morning, I said, pushing the door inward. The faint chime of the bell above announced our arrival to the sleeping shelves. Good morning, she replied, stopping short on the sidewalk. I'm not too early, am I? Not at all. Come on in. She followed me inside, her eyes wide, taking in the shadowed aisles. I reached for the light switch, the overhead fixtures sputtering to life with a low hum, chasing away the morning gloom. The store looked different in the daytime, softer, the dust motes visible as they danced in the beams of sunlight already slanting through the front windows. Have you had breakfast? I asked, turning to her. She hesitated, her gaze fixed on a shelf of classics. I'm fine. That meant no. There's a coffee shop next door, Marco's, I told her, gesturing toward the street. Go get yourself something. Tell Marco I sent you. He'll put it on my tab. I don't need... You can't work on an empty stomach. Go. I'll be here when you get back. My voice left no room for argument. She went, a small, almost imperceptible sigh escaping her lips. I used the time to prepare the back office. It was a small room, usually cluttered with boxes of inventory and old paperwork. I cleared off the sturdy oak desk Paul had used, pushed aside stacks of dusty books. The couch, a lumpy, faded green monstrosity, offered a clean but well-worn surface. I found a moth-eaten wool blanket in the storage closet, heavy and warm, and a pillow that smelled faintly of lavender and disuse. It would do. Jennifer returned 15 minutes later, clutching a steaming coffee cup and a blueberry muffin wrapped in thin paper. "Thank you," she said, her cheeks faintly flushed from the cold. "I'll pay you back when I get paid." "Don't worry about it." I spent the morning training her. I showed her the register, the ancient machine with its clunky buttons and temperamental drawer. I walked her through the store, explaining the organization. Fiction, alphabetical by author, nonfiction by subject, the poetry section tucked away in the back corner where the light was always softest. She learned fast, her fingers tracing the spines of books with a natural reverence. She asked thoughtful questions, pulling a small dog-eared notebook from her backpack to jot down notes. "Do you get a lot of customers?" she asked, her voice quiet. "Not like we used to," I admitted, a familiar pang of regret. "People buy books online now. I searched for the right word. Different." "That's sad," she murmured, running her hand along a shelf of leather-bound hardcovers. "These are beautiful, though. You can't get this from a screen." I liked her already. By lunch, I felt comfortable enough to let her handle the register while I wrestled with a new shipment of inventory in the back. Through the doorway, I watched her. She was careful with the few customers who drifted in, polite and attentive. She even recommended a book to a woman looking for a gift for her niece, describing the plot with an enthusiasm I hadn't heard in the store for years. During a slow stretch in the afternoon, I found her sitting on the floor in the poetry section, her notebook open on her lap. Her brow was furrowed in concentration, her pen scratching furiously, then pausing, then crossing out a line. "What are you working on?" I asked, my voice soft so as not to startle her. She looked up, startled anyway, her eyes wide. "Nothing, just..." She quickly snapped the notebook shut. "Stories, I guess. You write?" "Sort of. It's stupid." "It's not stupid," I countered, sitting down on the small wooden step stool near her. The wood was cold through my trousers. "Tell me about it." She shrugged, picking at a loose thread on her jeans. "Books were kind of my friends when I was younger, when things got bad at home." I listened, my gaze fixed on her face, the way her eyes held a flicker of old pain. "What happened at home, Jennifer?" She was quiet for a long time, tracing patterns on the cover of her notebook. The air filled with the quiet rustle of pages from a distant shelf, the low hum of the lights. "My mom had problems," she finally said, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. "Drugs, mostly. It started after I was born. I don't really remember a time before it. I'm sorry. I took care of her. When I was old enough, 10 maybe. I'd find her passed out on the couch or in the bathroom. I got good at hiding things from the neighbors, making excuses for why she couldn't come to the door." She said it like she was reciting a grocery list, the sheer weight of it almost unbearable. "That's a lot for a kid to handle. I didn't have a choice." She looked up, her eyes meeting mine, raw and unguarded. "I found her when she died. I was 12. Came home from school and she was in the bathroom. I called 911, but she was already gone." My chest tightened, a sharp physical ache. I remembered that feeling, the hollowness of finding Paul, cold and still beside me. "Jennifer, it's okay. It was 4 years ago." She closed her notebook, her fingers clenching the spine. "After that, it was foster care, then the orphanage. That place was awful. Cold. They didn't care about us. We were just numbers." "So, you left?" "Yeah. Last year I turned 15 and I just walked out. Been on my own since." She said it with a detached air, as if being homeless at 15 was just another bullet point in a long, unremarkable list of misfortunes. I understood loss. I understood loneliness. It hit me then, sitting on that creaking step stool in the poetry section, Jennifer's story settling into my bones, twining with my own. I'd been alone too. 2 years ago, my world had shattered. Paul died on a Thursday morning, a heart attack, sudden, no warning. I woke up and he was simply gone, still warm beside me, but gone. 40 years married. We'd built this bookstore together from nothing. Every shelf, every book, every groan of the old floorboards, it was ours. The funeral was small, a handful of Paul's dwindling relatives. Chris came, my son, but he stayed in the back, spent half the service scrolling on his phone. He left right after, without a real word of comfort. I spent 3 months in a fog, running the store because I didn't know what else to do. The apartment upstairs, once filled with Paul's laughter and the clatter of our shared life, felt cavernous without him. The silence pressed down on everything, suffocating. Then Chris showed up one afternoon. He had a business plan, slick and polished, subscription boxes, curated products for young professionals. He needed $350,000 to get started. He wanted me to sell William's books. "Think about it, Mom," he'd said, his voice smooth, devoid of warmth. "This place barely breaks even. You're working yourself to death for what? Dad's gone. You don't need to keep doing this." I had stared at him, my heart aching. "This store is all I have left of your father. It's a building. It's inventory. Dad wouldn't want you struggling. I'm not selling." His face had hardened, the familiar mask of disappointment and entitlement settling over his features. "You're choosing this over helping your own son?" "I'm not choosing anything. I'm keeping what your father and I built. Dusty books over your son's future." "Got it, Chris. Forget it." He'd stood up, grabbed his expensive coat, the fabric rustling. "Don't expect me to be around to watch you struggle. I'm done." He left, didn't call, didn't visit. 2 years of silence. I lost Paul, then I lost Chris by his own cold choice. I ended up completely alone, just like Jennifer. We both lost the people we loved, both ended up with nobody. I looked at her, sitting there on the floor, this kid who'd survived things she shouldn't have had to survive, and the timeline, so neatly aligned, clicked into place again. Chris and Amanda, 17 years ago. Jennifer, 16 now, born after Amanda left. It could be nothing, a twisted coincidence, or it could be everything. I needed proof, real proof, before I did anything that couldn't be undone. That night, after Jennifer had fallen asleep on the back office couch, I could hear the faint, rhythmic breathing from downstairs. I sat at the computer upstairs in my quiet apartment. The glow of the screen illuminated the dust motes dancing in the stale air. I searched for DNA tests, found a company that did ancestry matching, promised quick results, ordered 2 kits. My fingers trembled as I clicked the confirm button. They arrived 3 days later, a discreet brown envelope tucked in with the usual mail. Jennifer was restocking the young adult section, humming a tuneless melody under her breath, when I brought the small boxes downstairs. "Hey," I said, trying for a casual tone. She turned, a book in her hand. "What's that?" I held up the kits, bright white boxes with intricate genetic helixes printed on them. Ancestry DNA kits. I read this book about genetics a few weeks ago, got me curious about my family tree. Ordered 2 by accident. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but it was necessary. "Want to try it with me?" She looked at the boxes, then at me. "Really?" "Could be fun. See where our families came from." I tried to make it sound like a grand adventure. "I don't know much about my family," she said, her voice small again. "Just my mom." "That's okay. It might show you something interesting." She shrugged, a faint smile touching her lips. "Sure, why not?" We opened the kits at the counter, reading the instructions together. The process was simple. Swab your cheek, seal the tube, mail it back. Jennifer did hers first, carefully rubbing the swab along the inside of her cheek. I watched her spit into the tube, cap it, shake it. "That's it?" she asked. "That's it." I did mine, my own saliva feeling thick and strange in my mouth. We packaged them up, walked to the post office together, the November chill sharper today, and dropped them into the mail slot. "How long does it take?" Jennifer asked as we walked back to the bookstore, the late afternoon sun already dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples and oranges. 3 weeks, maybe 4. That's a long time. Good things take time. I smiled and she returned it, the first real unguarded smile I'd seen from her. It transformed her face, chased away the shadows, and for a moment, I saw a flash of Chris's easy charm, untainted by his coldness. 3 weeks. 3 weeks until I'd know for sure. 3 weeks until I'd have proof. And then I'd figure out what to do about Chris. The waiting started the next morning. It settled over me like a heavy blanket, a constant low hum beneath the surface of my days. Jennifer showed up at 8:30 with 2 coffees from Marco's, setting one on the counter in front of me. Thought I'd return the favor, she said, a shy smile on her face. It became our routine. Morning coffee, her behind the register while I unpacked new inventory, lunch shared in the back office, her asking questions about books I'd loved, me learning bits and pieces about who she was. The first week passed slowly, each day a measured step toward the unknown. I watched her, looking for more signs, more proof, beyond a familiar face and a timeline that fit. She worked hard, never complained, never showed up late. She seemed to absorb the rhythm of the bookstore, the quiet solace it offered. On Thursday of that week, I found her reading in the poetry section during her break, curled up on the same spot she'd been that first day. The light from the large window at the back caught the dust motes around her, making her seem almost ethereal. "Find something good?" I asked, my voice soft. She held up the book, its pages yellowed and soft with age. "Mary Oliver," she said, her voice reverent. "My mom used to read poetry when I was little, before things got bad." I sat down on the step stool near her, the wood cool against my thighs. "What was she like before?" Jennifer's face softened, a rare glimpse into the tenderness she guarded so fiercely. "She was good, really good. She'd make up voices for different characters when she read to me. She loved books almost as much as I do." A small private smile. "Almost. I might love them more." "What happened to her? I mean, what changed?" I asked, pushing gently. Jennifer closed the book, her fingers tracing the worn spine. "I think she was sad. My whole life, probably. Her parents kicked her out when she got pregnant. She was 20, the same age Amanda had been when Chris dated her. She tried to make it work, but I don't think she ever stopped being heartbroken about it." "The drugs started when you were young?" "Yeah, I remember being maybe 5 or 6, finding needles in the bathroom, not knowing what they were." She paused, her gaze distant. "By the time I was 10, I was the one taking care of her." "That's too much for a kid." "I didn't have a choice." She opened the book again, staring at the pages without really reading them. "But there were good days. Days when she'd be clean for a week, sometimes 2. She'd take me to the library. We'd check out stacks of books. She'd read poetry to me at night." "What kind?" "All kinds. Neruda, Dickinson, Frost. She had this old collection, torn cover, pages falling out. She gave it to me right before—" Jennifer stopped, her voice catching. "Right before things got really bad. Told me to keep it safe. Do you still have it?" She nodded, reaching into her worn backpack. She pulled out a small tattered book, its cover held together with strips of yellowed tape. The pages were brittle, stained, and bent at the corners. "I carried it with me everywhere. On the streets, in the shelters. It's the only thing I have from her." She handed it to me, her fingers brushing mine. I opened it carefully, the fragile paper crackling. Inside the front cover, written in faded looping ink, were the words, "For my Jennifer, love finds a way. Mom." My throat tightened, a lump forming. "This is beautiful," I managed to say. "She wrote that when I was 11, a few months before she died." Jennifer took the book back, holding it close to her chest. Sometimes I read it and try to remember her voice, the way she'd emphasize certain words, make them sound like music. "Is that why you write? To remember her?" "Kind of." She tucked the book back into her bag as if protecting a fragile secret. "I write the version of her I wish I'd had. The mom who stayed clean, who took care of me instead of the other way around. It's stupid." "It's not stupid," I said, a fierce conviction in my voice. "It's survival." She looked at me, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. "That's exactly what it is." The second week, Jennifer suggested we reorganize the young adult section. It's popular right now, she said, her brow furrowed in thought. If we move it to the front window, more people might come in. She was right. We spent 2 days rearranging shelves, carefully curating the display. She even made little handwritten signs, her neat cursive offering recommendations for different age groups, little doodles of open books gracing the corners. Within 3 days, we'd sold more young adult books than we had all month. You're good at this, I told her, genuinely impressed. She shrugged, a faint blush on her cheeks. I just know what I would have wanted when I was younger, a place that felt like it was for me. On Wednesday of that week, an older couple came in looking for a book club recommendation. Jennifer, without hesitation, suggested a few titles, explaining why each one would work, her passion for the stories evident in her voice. They bought 3 books and before leaving asked, "Do you host book clubs here?" "Not currently," I said a little sadly. "We used to when Paul was alive." After they left, Jennifer turned to me, her eyes bright. "Could we host a book club? You want to run it?" "I could try. Once a month, maybe? We could use the space in the back after hours." A spark ignited in me, something I hadn't felt in a long time. "Let's do it." Her whole face lit up, a genuine radiant smile. "Really?" "Really." She threw herself into planning, making flyers on the store's ancient printer, posting them around the neighborhood, even creating a small, tentative social media page for the store. By Friday, 6 people had signed up. I watched her with customers that week. She had a way with people, a quiet empathy that made them feel seen. An older man came in, his shoulders slumped, looking for something to read to his grandson. Jennifer spent 20 minutes with him, pulling books from shelves, explaining why each one mattered, her voice gentle and patient. "You remind me of my daughter," he said, his voice thick with emotion as he left. "She used to love books like this." Jennifer smiled, but after he left, she grew quiet, her gaze distant. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah." She began to restock a shelf of mysteries, her movements precise. "It's just weird. People being nice. You're not used to it? On the streets, you learn pretty fast who to trust. Most people look through you like you're not there." She paused, her fingers still on a book spine. "In the shelters, it's worse. Everyone's so angry, so tired. You keep your head down and stay out of the way." "What was the worst part?" I asked, needing to understand. She thought about it, her brow furrowed. "The fear, I guess, never knowing if someone was going to hurt you, take your stuff. I slept in doorways sometimes, library bathrooms, anywhere that felt safe for a few hours. How did you survive?" "I was careful, stayed in public places during the day, avoided certain streets at night." She looked at me then, her eyes direct. "I got lucky mostly. Could have been a lot worse." The 3rd week, just as my anxiety about the DNA results was reaching a fever pitch, Jennifer asked me something I wasn't expecting. "Why are you doing this?" We were closing up, counting the register, the rhythmic clack of coins against the wooden counter. "Doing what?" "Helping me, letting me stay here. You don't know me. I'm getting to know you." "But why? Most people would have said no, sent me back to the shelter." I stopped counting, looked at her across the counter, the faint scent of old paper and something sweet, like vanilla, lingering in the air. "Do you want the truth?" "Always." "I was alone for a long time before you walked in here. This store felt empty. I felt empty." I folded a $20 bill, added it to the stack. "You reminded me what this place was supposed to be, a place where people who love books can find each other." She was quiet for a moment, absorbing my words. "I keep waiting for you to change your mind. Tell me to leave." "I'm not going to do that. People always leave. Or I leave, that's how it works." There was a deep-seated weariness in her voice, a resignation that spoke of too many goodbyes. "Not this time." She nodded, though she didn't look entirely convinced. That weekend, the anxiety became unbearable. I started checking the DNA website multiple times a day, refreshing my email every 15 minutes, my heart thumping each time the page loaded. The results posted on a Monday morning, 3 weeks and 2 days after we'd mailed the samples. I saw the notification on my phone while Jennifer was restocking the mystery section, her back to me, her movements fluid and efficient. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. I fumbled for my laptop, opened it, navigating to the website. There it was, clear as day. Granddaughter match, Jennifer Carter. I stared at the screen, read it again and again. She was Chris's daughter, my granddaughter. I printed the results, the old printer groaning and jamming twice before finally spitting out the crisp sheet of paper. Jennifer, my voice sounded strange, a little hoarse. She came around the corner, a paperback in her hand. Yeah, she saw my face. What's wrong? The DNA results are in. Oh, she brightened, a spark of genuine curiosity in her eyes. What did we get? I pulled up the website on the laptop, turned it toward her. Look at this. She leaned in, reading the screen. Her face changed, slowly, subtly. Confused first, then shocked. Grandmother match. She looked at me, her eyes wide, searching. I don't understand. How is this possible? I took a breath, the air thick in my lungs. I have a son. His name is Chris. He's 38. Her gaze was fixed on me, unblinking. 17 years ago, he dated your mother, Amanda Carter. That summer, she used to come here to meet him. Then she left, went back to her hometown. I never saw her again. Jennifer's mouth opened, closed. You're saying he's my father, but my mom said he was dead. She lied, probably to protect you. Jennifer sank down hard into the desk chair behind the counter, the old wood groaning under her weight. I have a father? Yes. He's alive. Yes. She looked up at me, tears gathering in her eyes. Do you think he knows about me? The hope in her voice was a fragile, heartbreaking thing. I don't know, I said, my own voice thick with emotion, but I'm going to find out. When? I stopped. Soon. I need to talk to him first before... I swallowed, trying to compose myself. I need to give him a chance to do the right thing. What if he doesn't want me? The fear in her voice was stark, overshadowing the hope. Then he's a fool, I said, stepping closer, putting a hand on her shoulder. And you still have me. She wiped at her eyes, her gaze returning to the screen. We're really family? We're really family. She started crying then, real crying, the kind that comes from somewhere deep inside, raw and unrestrained, years of unshed tears finally breaking free. I pulled her into my arms, holding her close, letting her sob into my shoulder. My granddaughter. I had a granddaughter. That afternoon, I waited until Jennifer had gone to lunch, her eyes still red-rimmed, but a tentative joy beginning to bloom on her face. My phone sat on the counter in front of me, heavy with unspoken weight. Chris's number was still saved, nestled in my contacts, an unused relic from a life I no longer lived, 2 years since I'd last used it. I picked it up, then put it down, then picked it up again. What was I supposed to say? Your daughter is here. The one you didn't know existed, or maybe you did know. Maybe you knew and never cared. The thought made my blood run cold. I dialed before I could talk myself out of it. It rang 4 times, each ring a hammer blow against my chest. I almost hung up. Mom? His voice, when it came, was clipped, impatient, same as always. Chris, I need you to come to the bookstore. Silence on the other end, long and drawn out. Why? I need to talk to you about something, in person. I'm busy. It's important, very important. So tell me now. His irritation was palpable, a wall between us. I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles white. Do you remember Amanda Carter? Another silence, longer this time, fraught with a different kind of tension. What, Amanda Carter? You dated her 17 years ago. Why are you... He stopped, the question hanging in the air. Why are you bringing her up? Just come to the bookstore. Today, if you can. Mom, I don't have time for this. Make time. My voice came out harder than I meant, edged with years of disappointment and a fresh wave of protective fury. This isn't something we can do over the phone. He sighed, a heavy, annoyed sound. Fine, I can be there at 4. 4 works. He hung up without saying goodbye. I stood there holding the phone, my hand shaking. That was it, the first step. Jennifer came back 20 minutes later, a sandwich from the deli down the street clutched in her hand. She looked at my face, her brow furrowed. "You okay? You look pale." I called him. My voice was still a little shaky. "He's coming at 4. Her face went through about 10 emotions at once. Hope, fear, excitement, dread, anticipation. "Should I be here?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Maybe stay in the back office? Let you talk to him first?" "That's probably best," I agreed, though my heart ached at the thought of her hiding. What if he's happy? The hope in her voice, so fragile, was a dagger to my own heart. What if he wants to meet me? Let's just see what he says. I couldn't bring myself to offer false hope. 4 o'clock came too fast, and not fast enough. Jennifer disappeared into the back office 15 minutes early, the faint creak of the floorboards under her pacing footsteps the only sound. At 4:03, Chris walked in. He looked the same. Same expensive haircut, styled with meticulous care. Same tailored jacket, probably Italian wool. He glanced around the store, his gaze dismissive, like he was seeing a stranger's struggling business, not the place he'd grown up in. He didn't offer a hug, just a curt nod. "Mom." "Chris, thanks for coming." He stayed near the door, his hands in his pockets. "You said it was important. So, what's this about Amanda Carter?" I walked to the front door, locked it with a heavy click, and flipped the sign to "Closed." The finality of the sound echoed in the sudden silence. "We should sit." "I'd rather stand." "Fine." We'd do it his way. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the frantic beating of my heart. "Amanda had a daughter," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. 16 years old. Her name is Jennifer. His face didn't change, not a muscle twitched. "Okay, and she's your daughter." His face did change then, a flicker of something unreadable, quickly masked. "That's not possible." "It is possible. It's true. Amanda and I broke up. She left. She left because she was pregnant. With your baby." Chris shook his head, a dismissive gesture. "No, she would have told me." "Would she?" I challenged, my voice sharper than I intended. "Or would she have been too scared, too hurt?" He looked away, his jaw tight. "This is insane." I pulled the DNA results from under the counter, unfolded the crisp paper, and set it in front of him. "These are DNA test results. Jennifer took one. I took one. She's my granddaughter, which makes her your daughter." He stared at the paper, his eyes moving quickly over the words, the percentages, the undeniable match. "Where did you get this?" His voice was cold, accusing. "Does it matter? You tested some random kid without telling me." "She's not some random kid. She's Amanda's daughter. Your daughter." Chris pushed the paper away, a dismissive flick of his wrist. "I don't believe this. Labs make mistakes." "Chris, no." He stepped back, crossing his arms over his chest, putting more distance between us. "Why are you even telling me this?" The coldness in his voice was a deep, chilling ache, as if we were discussing a stranger, not his own child. "Because she deserves to know her father," I said, my voice rising in volume. "Amanda died 4 years ago. Overdose. Jennifer was 12. She's been in foster care, in an orphanage. She ran away last year. She's been homeless." Nothing. No reaction at all. His face remained impassive, a mask of indifference. "She's 16 years old," I continued, pushing, needing him to feel something. "And she's been through hell. The least you can do is meet her." "I don't want to be a father." He said it flat, simple, like stating an obvious fact. My stomach turned over, a wave of nausea washing through me. "What?" "I never wanted kids. I made that clear back then." "You told Amanda that?" "Yeah. When she started talking about the future, I told her I wasn't interested. That's probably why she left." He said it like it was a reasonable conclusion, like abandoning a pregnant woman was just a difference of opinion, a logical outcome. "So you knew," I whispered, the realization hitting me with sickening force. "You knew she was pregnant." "Yeah, she told me. I told her I didn't want anything to do with it. I was clear about that. That's why she left before I had to deal with it." Deal with it. As if Jennifer, a living, breathing person, was a problem to be solved, an inconvenience. "She's a person, Chris. A kid, your kid." "I have my own life." He uncrossed his arms, reaching for his keys in his pocket. "I'm not doing this." "You won't even meet her?" No, she's right here in this store, Chris, working for me. My eyes flicked toward the back, a silent appeal. His eyes darted briefly toward the back office door, then back to me, an almost imperceptible tightening around his mouth. I don't care. How can you say that? My voice was trembling now with anger and profound disappointment. Because it's the truth. He turned toward the door, his hand already on the lock. Find someone else to guilt trip, Mom. I'm not interested in playing happy family. This isn't about playing anything. This is about a girl who deserves... What? A father who doesn't want her? That'll be great for everyone. You're unbelievable. No, I'm honest. He unlocked the door, the click loud in the quiet store. Amanda made her choice. She had the kid. That was on her, not me. Don't contact me about this again. He walked out, pulling the door shut behind him with a quiet click, didn't look back. I stood there in the empty store, the DNA results still on the counter, the silence pressing down, heavy and suffocating. That was it. That was my son. I heard the back office door open, a faint creak on the old floorboards, footsteps. Jennifer appeared in the doorway, her face pale, streaked with tears, her eyes wide and devastated. She'd heard everything. He doesn't want me, she said, her voice thin, not a question but a broken statement of fact. Jennifer, it's okay. She wiped at her eyes fast, fiercely, trying to hide the fresh wave of tears. I figured, it's not okay. He should want you. He should have... It's fine. Her voice cracked, a small painful sound. I'm used to it. I came around the counter, pulling her into a hug. She collapsed against me, sobbing quietly, the kind of crying you do when you're trying not to bother anyone, trying to make yourself small and invisible. I'm sorry, I murmured, stroking her hair. I'm so sorry you had to hear that. You tried. Her voice was muffled against my shoulder. That's more than most people would do. He's wrong. You know that, right? This isn't about you. It's about him being selfish and cruel. She nodded against my shoulder. My mom was right. She told me he was dead. She was protecting me. She loved you. I know. We stood there for a long time, the store quiet around us, the afternoon light fading through the windows, turning the dust motes to gold. Finally, Jennifer pulled back, wiping her face with the back of her hand. Her eyes were still red, but something resolute had begun to form in their depths. So, what now? She asked, her voice still fragile but surprisingly steady. Now you stay here with me. This is your home. You don't have to. I want to. I held her shoulders, looking her in the eye, needing her to understand the depth of my conviction. You're my granddaughter. Your family. Chris doesn't get to decide that. What if he changes his mind? Then we'll deal with it, but I'm not holding my breath. She nodded, a faint, watery smile touching her lips. Can I ask you something? Anything. Do you think something's wrong with me? Like, why doesn't he want me? The question was raw, laced with the deep wound of a child's unspoken fear of unworthiness. My heart broke, truly broke in that moment. There's nothing wrong with you, I said, my voice fierce with conviction. Not one single thing. He's broken, not you. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. She hugged me again, tighter this time, burying her face in my neck. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick, for trying, for caring. You don't have to thank me. I do, though. We stayed like that until the light outside turned purple, until the streetlights flickered on, until the world felt a little less sharp, a little less cruel. Jennifer eventually went upstairs to lie down, needing the quiet solitude. I stayed in the store, cleaning up, putting the DNA results away in a drawer I rarely opened. Chris didn't want his daughter. Fine, I did, and that, I realized with a fierce, quiet certainty, was going to be enough. The next morning, we moved Jennifer's things upstairs. She didn't have much. The worn backpack, the tattered poetry book, 3 changes of clothes folded neatly, a toothbrush still in its original unopened package from the shelter. That's it? I asked, looking at the meager pile on my kitchen table. She shrugged. Easier to run when you don't have stuff weighing you down. You're not running anymore? She looked at me, a soft, almost imperceptible nod. No. I showed her the spare bedroom, Paul's old office. I'd cleared it out the week before, anticipating, hoping. I'd put fresh sheets on the bed, hung simple curtains. "This is yours," I said, gesturing to the small sunlit room. "Mine?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "All mine." She set her backpack gently on the newly made bed, running a hand along the old patchwork quilt I'd dug out of a linen closet. "I haven't had my own room since I was 12. Well, you have one now." That night, I heard her moving around at 3 in the morning. I found her standing in the kitchen, staring out the window at the dark street. "Can't sleep?" I asked, padding in, my old bathrobe wrapped tightly around me. "Not used to it being quiet," she murmured. "Or warm." She poured herself a glass of water from the tap. "At the shelter, there's always noise. People coming and going, doors slamming. You learn to sleep through anything. You'll get used to it." "Yeah." She drank the water, then set the glass down. "Thank you for this, for everything. Your family, this is where you belong." She smiled, a soft, genuine smile, and went back to bed. Within a week, she enrolled in night classes to finish high school. She worked at the bookstore during the day, handling customers, shelving books, and then after we closed, she'd stay at the counter, her textbooks spread out, a fierce concentration on her face. I watched her balance both without a single complaint. Never late, never asking for anything. "You're allowed to take breaks, you know," I told her once, finding her poring over a history textbook during a slow afternoon. "I'm fine. I like being busy." The months moved fast, settling into a comfortable rhythm. Her first book club meeting brought in 8 people, mostly older women from the neighborhood. By the 3rd month, we had 20 regulars. Jennifer led discussions like she'd been doing it for years, her questions insightful, her presence making everyone feel heard and valued. The bookstore started bringing in more money, not a lot, but enough that I could finally pay Jennifer a real wage, not just room and board. "You don't have to," she said, her eyes wide when I handed her the first check. "Yes, I do. You work, you get paid." She stared at the check as if it were a foreign object, turning it over in her fingers. Spring turned to summer, summer to fall. Jennifer turned 18 that November. I made her a chocolate cake with vanilla frosting, her favorite. She cried when she saw it. "No one's made me a cake since I was 11, she said, her voice thick with emotion. We ate it in the kitchen upstairs, just the 2 of us, the soft glow of the kitchen light on our faces. 2 weeks later, she walked across a stage at the community college and received her high school diploma. I sat in the audience with a dozen other families, watching her receive that piece of paper, a silent testament to her resilience. She found me afterward, hugging me hard. "I didn't think I'd ever finish," she whispered against my shoulder. "I knew you would." That winter, I found her notebook on the counter. She'd left it there while restocking, open to a page filled with careful handwriting. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. The pages were filled with stories, some crossed out, some finished, her handwriting small and precise. The stories were good, really good, raw and honest, about a girl surviving things she shouldn't have had to survive, finding solace in words. "You read it." Her voice was soft behind me. I turned, the notebook still in my hands. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." "It's okay." She took the notebook, her fingers brushing mine. "They're not very good." "They're excellent." She looked doubtful, a faint blush creeping up her neck. "You're just saying that." "I've been selling books for 40 years, Jennifer. I know good writing when I see it." She bit her lip, her gaze fixed on the floor. "You think I could write a book?" "Yes." "Really?" "Really." She started writing seriously after that. Every night after the store closed, hunched over the kitchen table upstairs, a cup of tea growing cold beside her. Weekends, early mornings before we opened. The only sounds, the rustle of her pages and the gentle clack of her old laptop keyboard. At 19, she finished her first manuscript, 300 pages, a novel about a girl taking care of her addict mother, finding her dead, surviving foster care, and eventually finding hope in books. She gave it to me on a Tuesday afternoon, a thick stack of printed pages held together by a binder clip. "I don't know if it's any good," she said, her voice small, uncertain, but I finished it. I read it that night, all of it, couldn't stop. The words pulled me in, raw and authentic, a window into her soul. When I finished, the first rays of dawn were painting the sky outside my window. I went to her room, knocked softly on the door. She opened it, her eyes still heavy with sleep, then saw my face. "It's bad, isn't it?" "It's beautiful." My voice cracked. "Jennifer, this is really beautiful." She started crying then, soft, silent tears. "You mean it?" "Every word." We spent the next year learning how to query agents. Jennifer wrote letters, hundreds of them, painstakingly researching each agency. She sent them out, a small bundle of hope tucked into each envelope, and received rejections. Lots of rejections. Form letters, mostly. "Maybe it's not good enough," she said after the 20th one, her shoulders slumped in defeat. "It's good enough, you just haven't found the right person yet." She kept trying, and the bookstore kept growing. Jennifer had set up social media accounts, posting photos of new releases, author recommendations, candid shots of the store's cozy corners. People started coming in because they'd seen us online, drawn by the warmth and authenticity she projected. "You're good at this," I told her, watching her expertly craft an Instagram post. "It's easy when you love what you're doing." At 21, an agent said yes. Jennifer called me from the back office, her voice shaking with disbelief and joy. "She wants to represent me." "That's wonderful." "She thinks she can sell it." "Of course she can." 3 months later, the manuscript sold. A small publisher, a modest advance, but it was real. Jennifer held the contract in her hands, like it might disappear, her fingers tracing the printed words. "I'm going to be a published author," she whispered, her eyes shining. "Yes, you are." 2 years later, her book came out. We hosted the launch party at the bookstore. The place was packed, warm with bodies and laughter and the buzz of excited conversation. Jennifer read from chapter 1, her voice steady, strong, commanding the room. I stood in the back, leaning against a shelf of well-loved novels, watching her. This girl who'd walked in homeless and scared, now standing in front of 50 people, reading her own words, her own story. After everyone left and the last stragglers had departed, we sat in the quiet store, a comfortable exhaustion settling over us. "Thank you," Jennifer said, her gaze sweeping over the empty chairs, the remaining stack of signed books. "For believing in me. I'll always believe in you." The book did well. Not a bestseller, not yet, but it sold. It garnered good reviews, won a regional award for debut fiction. The local paper did a small piece on her. Local author publishes first novel. Jennifer smiled for the photo, but didn't make a big deal of it. At 25, her second book came out. It sold better than the first, made some bestseller lists. Not the big ones, but enough. Publishers started paying attention. Her third book sold at auction, 6 publishers bidding. The advance was $200,000. Jennifer came upstairs that day, sat at the kitchen table, and put her head in her hands. "You okay?" I asked, putting a comforting hand on her back. "I don't know what to do with this much money." Her voice was muffled. "Save some, invest some, buy yourself something nice." "I want to give some to the bookstore." "No." "Why not?" "Because you earned that. Your words, your work." "You gave me everything," she said, looking up, her eyes earnest. "Let me give something back." We compromised. She helped with repairs, new shelves, updated the heating system, things the store had needed for years but I hadn't been able to afford. The bookstore thrived. Jennifer thrived. We fell into rhythms that had become the bedrock of our lives. Morning coffee at the kitchen table before opening. Book talk during slow afternoons, dinner together most nights, her telling me about her writing, me telling her about customers, about Paul in the early, challenging days of the store. 10 years passed like that. Jennifer grew from a scared 16-year-old into a confident, insightful 26-year-old woman. She was kind, talented, strong in ways that still surprised me. But sometimes I'd catch her staring out the window, a look on her face I recognized, a wistful longing, a small, subtle ache. "What are you thinking about?" I asked once, finding her lost in thought. "Nothing." "Jennifer," she sighed, a fragile puff of air. "Do you think he ever thinks about me?" Chris. Always Chris, a ghost in the background of her remarkable life. "I don't know. I wonder what it would be like having a father." "You don't need him." "I know, but sometimes She trailed off, shaking her head. "Never mind." You're allowed to want that. It's stupid. It's human. She never brought it up again, not directly, but I knew it was there, that ache for something she'd never had, a wound that even success and love couldn't entirely heal. We'd built something good together, something real and solid, but part of her still carried that scar, the father who didn't want her. I hoped time would heal it. I was wrong. Things stayed quiet for a few months after that conversation. Jennifer kept writing, her dedication unflagging. The bookstore kept thriving, a warm, bustling hub in the neighborhood. We had our morning coffee, our evening talks, our quiet, comfortable life together. I stopped worrying about Chris. He'd made his choice 10 years ago. As far as I knew, he'd forgotten we existed. I should have known better. One morning, Jennifer came down to breakfast with her phone in her hand, a wide, almost giddy smile on her face. "Look at this," she said, holding the phone out to me. "Someone from that online literary magazine interviewed me last month. I forgot it was coming out today." I took the phone, my fingers brushing hers. The headline, stark and bold, read, "From homeless teen to best-selling author, Jennifer Carter's inspiring journey." There was a photo of Jennifer, taken right here in the bookstore, surrounded by shelves, looking radiant and confident. The article told her whole story. Amanda, the drugs, finding her mother dead, foster care, the orphanage, running away, a year on the streets, then finding William's books, finding me. It mentioned the $200,000 advance, her rising career, how she'd been raised by her grandmother, Linda Williams. "This is good," I said, but my stomach tightened with a familiar, unwelcome premonition. "They want to do a podcast interview next month," Jennifer said, her eyes shining. "Isn't that crazy?" "That's wonderful." I handed her phone back, trying to ignore the prickle of unease. She took her phone, scrolling through the comments, people congratulating her, saying her story inspired them. I drank my coffee, trying to ignore the knot of dread forming in my gut. The message came 2 days later. Jennifer was restocking the poetry section, humming softly, when her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, glanced at the screen. Her face went pale, all the color draining from it. "What is it?" I asked, my voice sharp with alarm. She didn't answer, just kept staring at the screen, her hand trembling. I walked over, my heart beginning to pound. "Jennifer?" He messaged me. Her voice was barely a whisper, thin and reedy with shock. "Who?" "Chris. My father." My blood went cold. "What?" She held up the phone. I leaned in, reading the message over her shoulder. "Hi, Jennifer. I'm Chris Williams. I'm your father. Your grandmother told me about you a few years ago, and I wasn't ready then. I was wrong. I've regretted it every day since. I'd like to meet you if you're willing. I'm so sorry." I handed the phone back to her, my voice low and firm. "Don't answer that." "What?" "Don't answer it. Block him." "Why would I block him?" Her eyes flashed with hurt, confusion. "Because he wants something." Jennifer's face hardened, a defensive shield snapping into place. "You don't know that?" "Yes, I do. He saw that article, saw you're successful now. He's interested." "Maybe he's changed. People like Chris don't change." "You don't know him anymore. It's been 10 years. "I know him better than anyone." My voice was clipped, sharp. "And he's a selfish, manipulative man." Jennifer put her phone in her pocket, her jaw set. "People deserve second chances. Not him." "Why? Because he hurt you? Or because he didn't want me?" "Both." "Well, maybe I want to give him a chance anyway." We stared at each other, the air between us suddenly thick with unspoken resentments. The first real fight we'd ever had. "If you do this," I said, my voice low, "he's going to hurt you. Or maybe he's genuinely sorry. Maybe he wants to be in my life. He abandoned you before you were born. And maybe he regrets it. The message says he regrets it." Words are easy, Jennifer. "So I shouldn't believe anyone who apologizes. You shouldn't believe him." She turned away, walking toward the back office. "I'm going to answer him." "Don't. It's my choice." She closed the back office door behind her, the sound a quiet, definite click. I stood there in the poetry section, surrounded by books about love and loss and betrayal. This was going to end badly. I knew it in my bones. The first coffee meeting happened 3 days later. Jennifer came home glowing, a lightness in her step I hadn't seen in years. He was so nice, she said, setting her keys down on the kitchen counter. He apologized for everything, said he was young and scared, that he's thought about me for years. What else did he say? I tried to keep my voice neutral to hide the cold dread in my stomach. He asked about my writing, about my books. He seemed really proud. Of course he did. My cynicism was barely hidden. Are you going to see him again? I asked, my heart sinking. He asked if we could meet next week. Is that okay? You don't need my permission. I know, but I don't want you to be upset. I'm not upset, I lied, my voice tight. I was terrified. I just want you to be careful. I will be. The meetings became regular, once a week, then twice. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into lunch on weekends. Jennifer texted me updates, small bright dispatches that chipped away at my resolve. He's so funny. He told me about his startup ideas. He asked to see my manuscript. I watched from a distance, biting my tongue, waiting for the other shoe to drop. After a month, Chris started showing up at the bookstore, always when I wasn't there, of course. Jennifer would mention it later, casually. Dad stopped by today. Dad. She was calling him Dad now. What did he want? Just to say hi. He bought a book, one of mine. How nice. You don't like him being around? It wasn't a question. I don't trust him. You don't trust anyone. Her voice held a hint of accusation. That's not true. You've been alone for so long, you forgot what it's like to let people in. That stung. The words cut deep, sharper than she knew. I let you in because you had to. You needed help. That's not why? Then why don't you want me to have a father? Her voice was rising, frustration coloring her tone. I want you to have a father who actually cares about you, not someone who showed up the second you became successful. Jennifer's face hardened, her eyes flashing. You're wrong about him. I hope I am, I said, my voice heavy with a premonition of disaster. But I wasn't. 2 months in, Jennifer mentioned Chris to her literary friends, brought him to a book signing. He charmed everyone, told stories, made people laugh. I watched him work the room, saw how he positioned himself next to Jennifer, how he mentioned being her father to anyone who'd listen. He's really proud of you, one of Jennifer's friends told me, a genuine warmth in her voice. Is he? After 3 months, things shifted. Jennifer came home from dinner with Chris, quiet, thoughtful, a faint crease between her brows. Everything okay? I asked, my stomach clenching. He told me about a business opportunity. There it was, the other shoe finally dropping. What kind of opportunity? Subscription boxes, she said, her voice a little breathless, excited. He says the market's coming back, better than it was 10 years ago. The same pitch, word for word. My heart sank. How much does he need? Jennifer looked surprised. How did you know he needs money? Lucky guess. My voice was flat. He needs investors, people who believe in the concept, and he asked you. He said he'd understand if I wasn't interested, but he wanted to give me first opportunity since I'm family. Since I'm family, the words made me sick. How much? 100,000 to start, but he says the returns could be huge. Jennifer, I know what you're thinking, but he showed me the business plan. It's solid. Don't give him money. My voice was calm but firm. It's my money. I know, but please don't do this. He's my father. He's a con artist. Stop. Jennifer stood up, pushing her chair back with a loud scrape. You never wanted me to have a relationship with him. You're trying to sabotage this. I'm trying to protect you. From what? From having a parent who actually wants me? Her voice cracked with emotion. He doesn't want you. He wants your money. You don't know that. Yes, I do. No, you just can't stand that someone besides you cares about me. That's not fair. Neither is this. She grabbed her coat, her eyes blazing. I'm going for a walk. She left, slamming the apartment door behind her, the sound echoing through the quiet building. I sat at the kitchen table, my hands shaking. I had to do something, had to prove what Chris was really after, before she made a terrible mistake. The plan came to me that night, sharp and clear. It was risky. If I was wrong, Jennifer would never forgive me. But if I was right, she'd finally see the truth. I called Chris the next morning. Mom? He sounded surprised to hear my voice. What's going on? I need to talk to you in person about Jennifer and money. Silence. Then a quick, almost eager response. Okay, when? Today, 4 o'clock, the bookstore. I'll be there. He hung up. I texted Jennifer, my fingers trembling as I typed. I need you to trust me. Come to the bookstore at 4:15. Don't come inside. Wait in the back office. Just listen, please. She texted back an hour later. What's this about? Please, just do this one thing for me. Fine. The single word was laced with skepticism, but it was enough. At 3:45, I closed the store early, locking the front door, flipping the sign to closed. Jennifer arrived at 4:00, her face a mask of worry. I let her in through the back, the old door groaning. What's going on? She asked, her voice low. Chris is coming. I'm going to talk to him. I need you to listen from the back office. Why? Because I need to prove something, and you won't believe me unless you hear it yourself. This is crazy. Just listen, that's all I'm asking. She looked at me, her eyes searching, hurt. You really think he's using me? I know he is, and if I'm wrong, then I'll apologize to both of you, but I'm not wrong. She went to the back office, leaving the door cracked a sliver, the silence in the store suddenly charged with a terrible anticipation. Chris arrived at 4:03. I let him in, locked the door behind him. The chimes above the door, usually so welcoming, felt like a funeral bell. What's this about? He asked, his eyes immediately sweeping the empty shelves, appraising. Sit down. He sat at one of the small reading tables, still looking around the store, a calculating glint in his eye. I've been thinking, I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil inside, about what you said 10 years ago, about selling this place. His eyes sharpened, a flicker of genuine interest. Okay, and? You were right. I'm getting older. This is too much work, so you're ready to sell? Maybe. I watched his face, saw the calculations begin, the numbers dancing in his eyes. The property's worth more now, $450,000 at least. That's good, he said carefully, trying to keep his composure. I'll sell it, I said, letting the words hang in the air, and I'll give you all the money. What? His mask slipped for a moment, revealing genuine shock. Every penny, $450,000, maybe more if I get a good offer. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. Why would you do that? One condition? What? You disappear from Jennifer's life completely. No contact. Block her number, block her social media, walk away and never come back. Chris stared at me, his eyes narrowed, considering. You're serious. Dead serious. The money's yours if you leave her alone. She's an adult. She can make her own choices. Then make yours, the bookstore or your daughter. He was quiet for maybe 5 seconds. 5 excruciating seconds, during which my heart pounded, a tiny, foolish part of me still hoping, praying I was wrong. Deal. My heart sank, a cold, heavy stone. I had hoped I was wrong. When do I get the money? He asked, his voice suddenly eager, avaricious. I need time to list the property, a few months. How do I know you'll actually do it? How do I know you'll actually leave? He smiled, a cold, predatory smile that twisted his handsome features into something ugly. I guess we trust each other. I guess so. I paused out of a morbid curiosity. Why the quick yes? Why not fight me on this? He shrugged, a dismissive flick of his hand. Be realistic. She'll get over it. She got this far without me. She doesn't really need a father. She wanted one, though. Sure, but that's not my problem. And honestly, he looked around the cozy bookstore. She's got her books, her writing. That'll keep her busy. Kids don't need as much as people think. That's your daughter you're talking about. That's $450,000 you're offering. Actually, with the right agent, you could probably get $500,000. Behind him, the back office door opened. Quietly, slowly, Jennifer stepped out. Her face was wet with tears, but her eyes, though red-rimmed, were clear and utterly resolute. Chris turned, saw her. His expression didn't change much, just a slight tightening around his mouth, a flicker of annoyance. Hey, Jen. Don't. Her voice was steady, firm, ringing with a newfound strength I hadn't heard before. Don't call me that. Look, this is exactly what it looks like. She walked closer, her posture straight, every inch of her radiating a quiet power. You were using me. I wasn't. His voice was too quick, too defensive. You were waiting for me to give you money the whole time. Every coffee, every dinner, you were just waiting. That's not true. Yes, it is. You said it yourself. I don't really need a father. Her voice broke slightly, but she quickly regained control. She set this up. Jennifer's gaze flickered to me, a fierce, unwavering gratitude in her eyes. She manipulated this whole conversation. She was right about you the whole time, and I didn't believe her. Jennifer, come on, you're smarter than this. Chris tried to charm her, the old easy smile falling into place. Yeah, I am. She crossed her arms, her stance defiant. Get out. Chris looked at me, a sudden flicker of desperation in his eyes. There's no bookstore money, is there? No, I said, my voice flat. His face went hard, the charm evaporating, replaced by a cold, calculating fury. This is ridiculous. I never wanted a kid then, and I don't need this drama now. He grabbed his jacket, his movements jerky. You two deserve each other, stuck in this pathetic bookstore playing happy family. He stalked to the door, unlocked it, and slammed it behind him, the sound echoing like a gunshot through the silent store. Jennifer stood there, trembling, her shoulders heaving. I went to her, put my arms around her. She collapsed, sobbing into my shoulder, the raw, heartbroken sound tearing at my own heart. I'm sorry, I said, stroking her hair. I'm so sorry you had to hear that. You were right, she choked out, her voice muffled. You were right about everything. I wish I'd been wrong. I really thought... I couldn't finish the sentence. I know. She pulled back, her face streaked with tears, but a new, unyielding strength in her gaze. I'm so stupid. You're not stupid. You wanted a father. That's human. He never cared. No, he didn't. We stood there in the bookstore, just the two of us. The only family either of us needed. Thank you, Jennifer said finally, pulling back, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. For what? For saving me. From making a huge mistake. That's what family does. She pulled back, a faint, resolute smile on her face. I love you. I love you too. Outside, the streetlights came on, casting long shadows. The world kept turning, but inside William's books, we had everything we needed. A year passed. We didn't hear from Chris. Not a word. Jennifer blocked his number, blocked his social media. He was gone from our lives like he'd never been there at all. Good riddance. Jennifer's third novel, the one that had sold at auction for that substantial advance, hit the bestseller lists in the spring. Not just the small ones, the big ones, the New York Times, USA Today. Her face, thoughtful and intelligent, appeared on displays in bookstores across the country. We celebrated with takeout Chinese food in the apartment upstairs, sitting at the kitchen table, just the two of us, the way we liked it. This is insane, Jennifer said, scrolling through her phone, a look of genuine wonder on her face. People are actually reading my book. Of course they are. It's brilliant. She smiled, a quiet, contented smile, and set the phone down. I'm working on something new. Oh? Another novel, a memoir actually, about us, about the bookstore, about finding family when you least expected it. My throat tightened, a sudden lump forming. Yeah? If that's okay with you. More than okay. She started therapy that summer, twice a week, working through the abandonment, the rejection, all the years of hurt that had accumulated in her small frame. It helps, she told me once, after a session, her eyes clearer, just talking about it. Good, that's good. William's books kept thriving. We hosted more events, book clubs, author readings. Young writers started showing up, kids from foster care, teenagers who'd aged out of the system, people who reminded me of Jennifer at 16. She mentored them, sat with them in the poetry section, read their work, told them they had talent, gave them hope. You're good at this, I told her, watching her listen patiently to a timid girl reading a poem. I remember what it felt like, she said, her gaze soft, having no one believe in you. At 76, I was still running the store. My hair had gone completely gray. My hands ached in the mornings, but I showed up every day, opened the doors, made the coffee. Jennifer had moved into her own apartment a few blocks away, a spacious place with high ceilings and tall windows. She decorated it with books, framed covers of her novels on the walls, but she came to the bookstore every morning. We still had our coffee together, still talked about books, still lived the rhythms we'd built over 12 years. Her fourth book came out in the fall. I opened it to the dedication page. To Linda, who gave me home, family, and stories. I cried right there at the counter, a silent stream of tears, didn't even try to hide it. By December, we were planning the Christmas event, Jennifer's latest novel, a reading and signing. We decorated the store, lights strung in the windows, garland draped over the shelves. It looked like something from a movie, warm and inviting against the biting cold of the winter night. The night of the event, people packed the place, standing room only, customers I'd known for years, mingled with new faces who'd discovered us online. Young writers Jennifer had mentored, friends from her writing community. Jennifer stood at the front, beneath a wreath of holly and twinkling lights, reading from chapter 3, her voice clear and strong, resonating through the crowded store. I stood in the back, leaning against a shelf, watching her command the room. This woman who'd walked in 12 years ago with nothing but a worn backpack and a desperate hope had built this. Her career, her life, her unwavering confidence. After everyone left and the last of the signed books were shelved, we cleaned up. Stacked chairs, swept the floor, carefully put the garland back in place. I made tea in the back office, brought out 2 steaming cups. We sat in the reading chairs by the front window, the street outside dark except for the streetlights, the store warm and quiet around us. "I never thanked you properly," Jennifer said, her voice soft in the stillness. "For what?" "For that day when I walked in here. You didn't have to hire me, you didn't have to care. I saw you, that's all. Most people don't see homeless kids, they look away. Well, I'm glad I didn't. Well, me too." She sipped her tea, the warmth radiating through the cup. "This store was dying when you got here, you know. I barely had customers." "You saved me too," I said, meeting her gaze across the small table. We sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from years of knowing someone, of building a life together one day at a time. Jennifer laughed suddenly, a soft, joyful sound, something she'd read on her phone. The sound filled the store, bounced off the shelves, warmed the corners that used to feel so cold and empty. I looked around at the books, at the lights in the window, at this girl who'd become a woman, who'd become my family. 12 years ago, I'd been alone, grieving, going through the motions. Then a girl walked in asking for a job, and everything changed. Not because of grand gestures or dramatic moments, but because of coffee in the mornings, books shared in the afternoons, dinner conversations that stretched into evening, small kindnesses that built, brick by brick, into something unbreakable. Chris never understood that. He'd been looking for something big, something profitable, something impressive. He'd missed what was right in front of him, his loss. Jennifer set her cup down. "I should head home, early morning tomorrow." "Okay." She hugged me at the door, her arms strong around me. "Love you. Love you too." She walked out into the crisp December cold. I watched through the window until she turned the corner, a silhouette disappearing into the night. Safe. I locked up, turned off most of the lights, left the window display glowing, a beacon in the darkness. Upstairs, the apartment was quiet, but not lonely anymore. Never lonely. I made myself another cup of tea, sat at the kitchen table, looking at the framed photo Jennifer had given me last Christmas. The 2 of us in the bookstore, both smiling, my arm around her, my granddaughter, my family. Tomorrow, she'd be back. We'd have our coffee, talk about books, serve customers, live our ordinary, extraordinary life.